Hello, everyone. Welcome to CocoaHeads, our first technical meetup of the year. We did have an event late last month. Thank you to everyone who came along. I hope you enjoyed it. It was an in-person catch-up for those who don't know. Just in Sydney, and it was good fun. So yeah, we hope everyone enjoyed that, but we're back to the technical talks this month. To begin with, I would like to acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, the traditional custodians of this land, and pay my respects to elders, both past and present. So as always, we'll kick off with a little bit of housekeeping before getting into the main event for tonight. So I'm Zach, I'm one of your CocoaHeads hosts. We also have Mickey help out, but he's not on the call this evening. As always, a big thank you to our sponsor, Baloo, and we'll have a little bit more to say about Baloo later on, but we thank them for their support, their ongoing support with CocoaHeads. It's I work with them. So a reminder that Sydney CocoaHeads has a code of conduct that applies to all our events, online or in person. You can read it in full on the website at the link posted there, but it boils down to sort of 3 key points. So be respectful, be inclusive, and be aware. If there's any problems or concerns, please speak to myself or Nikki regarding this. A reminder that we have a Slack community, and that's probably the best way to keep in touch with fellow attendees tonight. We have a meetup channel in there, and we'll be posting to it throughout the night. Also a good way to have a chat with other attendees during the talk. So if you'd like to join, feel free to take a screenshot of that slide, and the URLs at the bottom there. Everyone's free to join that. It's also a good place to hang out throughout the month, ask some tech questions, or get involved in a few discussions. So as always, a welcome to first-time attendees, those who might be joining for the first time, whether you're in Sydney or not. Welcome, we hope you enjoy. They run their meetups in a similar fashion. I believe they were back in person last week, and they're on the second Thursday of the month, whereas we're on the third. So yeah, if you like what you see tonight, could be a good idea to drop in there next month. All right, so on to tonight's schedule. We have one talk from Rudrank. Is testing for macOS app fun? And then at the conclusion of that, we will be having a Zoom catch-up. If you'd like to join the Zoom catch-up, I'll be posting the link to that in the Slack group at the conclusion of the talk. Everyone's welcome to join, jump on, have a chat. I'm sure there'll be a bit of discussion about last week's Apple event. Could be a bit of a fun this month. So if you are hiring or if you're looking for work, feel free to post about it on the jobs channel in that Slack. There's always a community of people looking for jobs or have roles to fill. It's a good place to post about it in there. Now, I mentioned I would talk about Baloo again. So looking ahead for the next couple of months, exciting times. We're looking to get back to in-person meetups next month. So Baloo have kindly offered their offices. I'll post the specific details a bit closer to the event, but it will be on the third Thursday, as always, and it'll be at the Baloo offices. So that's very exciting. We are, however, still looking for talks. So if you'd like to give a talk back at the first in-person meetup, please get in touch. That would be great. May will be another in-person event, and it will be a celebration of Global Accessibility Awareness Day, and it will be hosted by Aaron. So I'm very much looking forward to that as well. And then, yeah, we'll take it from there. I think June will be WWDC, and yeah, we'll see what happens after that. All right, so just before we get into tonight's first talk, a quick recap of the month that was. So a little bit of an overview of the Apple event, because really that's the main thing that happened in our tech sphere this month. Started off, green iPhone 13s. They seem to look pretty cool. Haven't seen one in person yet, but as someone who had a green iPhone 12, I definitely don't mind this look. We also got an update to the iPhone SE with an A15 Bionic chip, so the same as the iPhone 13. It's 5G, and it starts at $719. Excuse me. Sorry. No worries. So we also got an updated iPad Air. So we've got new colors, an M1 chip, 5G, of course. What Apple mobile device doesn't have 5G these days? And a front camera with center stage. That seems to be a bit of a theme amongst devices with front cameras that Apple releases at the moment. We also got the M1 Ultra chip, which is a very exciting chip. Essentially combines two M1 Maxes for pretty incredible performance by the looks of it. Some of the specs, even compared it to the Mac Pro, the 28 core, which is impressive. And this chip is available inside the new Mac Studio. So another desktop Mac. It's Apple's sort of second desktop Apple Silicon Mac after the Mac Mini. However, it is a lot bigger than the Mac Mini. You can see there, just sitting on a desk, sort of a significant size bump over the Mac Mini. But it does look pretty great. You can also configure it with just an M1 Max chip if you don't want to go Ultra. But if you do go Ultra, it starts at a whopping 6,100 Australian dollars, which is quite a lot of stomach, and that doesn't even come with a screen. So it was announced alongside a display though, a nice 27-inch with the same panel as an LG 5K called the Studio Display. A few specs, got 600 nits of brightness, P3 color gamut, the option for nano texture glass. And it's got an A13 chip inside of the display, which is pretty cool. And the camera and sorry, that chip powers the camera and the audio system. And that camera, of course, has center stage as well for focusing on your video calls. You do have to decide at the time of order if you want a VESA mount adapter or if you'd rather it come with the monitor stand, as these don't seem to be replaceable. But overall, it looks like a pretty good Apple display. Also worth calling out in developer news, this was announced this week. It's not related to the event, but starting on the 25th of April, we'll be required to upload builds using Xcode 13 only. So Xcode 12, no more. So, all right, that's my very, very quick summary. And without further ado, I'll stop sharing my screen and hand it over to Rudrank for his talk. So thanks and take it away.
So hi everyone, my name is Rudrank Riyam and let me just share my screen. So good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are located. So my topic for today is testing for macOS App Fun. So for a couple of months, I have been testing iOS and macOS apps and found some contrasting difference between the two, especially when it comes to UI testing. And over the months, I realized that if you are doing your macOS tests on a CI service provider, then you may face some problems. And luckily, I have gone through all the pains and I want to share my learnings and lessons with you all so that you can do your macOS app tests and make it fun as well. To give a brief introduction about myself, my name is Rudrank and I recently graduated from college last year. I interned at various startups over the 4 years, including Apple, where I worked with the voice control team. And previously, I worked as a freelance iOS engineer working with 4 different startups. And I love writing. And so I did technical writing as a side hobby with various startups as well. Currently, I am working as the developer relations engineer at CodeMagic, which is a mobile CI/CD platform. And I am advocating and helping the iOS community out there. So before I jump into the talk, I prepared a sample project for this particular talk, which the name of the project is called Koti, which shows the name of a list of authors. And when you click on a particular author, it shows the detail of them and the particular quotes by them. So this is a trimmed down version of my app, which is on the App Store right now. And it hits me daily with some hard hitting quotes that gets me out of my bed and exercise. So if I talk about unit testing on iOS and macOS, there is not much difference between these two, because when you are testing when you're testing your unit, when you're testing a particular logic of code, it should be your particular business logic or something that is critical to your app. And in that case, it shouldn't be platform dependent unless that is particular that's a feature that is particular for that particular OS. Let's say you have a particular feature for macOS or tvOS. So when it comes to unit testing, there's not much difference between the two because you're testing the business logic. And so if I have to compare both of them, it is kind of similar, but the main difference comes when you are UI testing. So before I go into UI testing, I will just run the app and show you how both of them look like. So before we jump onto the writing UI test for them. So this shows a list of authors, and when I click on a particular author, let's say Abraham Lincoln, it shows the list of their description and the list of quotes by them. And I use the same code base. Thanks to the power of Swift UI, I was able to get the macOS done as well. So if you see the difference between the two, like for the iOS app, it's a navigation that goes into another screen, and compared to macOS, when you click on a particular author, it shows as a split view on the side of it. So on the UI testing front, I want to write some tests for testing the navigation. So if I go to I create a function that queries all the tables and all the buttons from it. And then I want to pick a particular author. Let's say I'm clicking on APJ Abdul Kalam, and I add a predicate for it. And then I search for an element which matches this predicate. And then I tap on that author. So it should ideally get me to the next screen. And then on the next screen, I search for a navigation item, and with a navigation button with the label as authors, and then I tap on that. So ideally, in a perfect case scenario, I should go back to the main screen. Then I do this again with another author. I tap on the element matching a particular predicate, and then go back to the main screen as well. So if I try to test this particular function, and if you can see it in action, that it tests that particular author, goes to the detail screen, and then comes back. So it's very easy if I'm testing on the iOS simulator and not talking about the macOS one. So if I go to macOS, and as I mentioned earlier, that it's a kind of a split view. So in this, so before, when we talk about iOS, we usually have only one screen that we are working with. But when it comes to macOS, you can have multiple windows that you are dealing with. You can open multiple windows of the same app. So you have to query the windows. And another thing is that while we were, all the data is coming from a JSON for this particular case, but still you have to have an expectation waiting for your cursor to go on that particular item and click on it. So I add expectation. The predicate is that we search if the predicate is that the element exists, and then we query the tables, the button with that particular author name. We add an expectation with a timeout of 10 seconds for the particular predicate, and we evaluate it with the particular query. And a small difference is that on iOS, you are usually tapping on an element versus clicking it on macOS. And for this, I want to scroll down on the view. So let's say if I open the app, I want to go to this particular screen, then scroll down to the bottom, open another author, let's say Albert Einstein, then go back and select another author. So this is the flow I want to test this list navigation. We add the method to swipe down and then click on it. So let's start and try to run this function. So while we did it on iOS, we didn't get any pop-up like this, right? It was very easy to run the test on iOS, but for macOS, I am getting a pop-up which says Test Manager is trying to enable UI automation and touch ID or enter your password to allow this. But why is it asking it in the first place? Why do I have to give such permission for it? One difference that you have to note is that when you are testing on the iOS simulator, Xcode has the whole control over it. But when you are running on your app on a Mac OS app, the system has the control over the Mac OS app. And if you want to do any kind of UI automation testing, then Xcode should also have control over your Mac OS app. So for this particular reason, you have to give permissions for this. And I will just wait for a minute to for this permission, because I want to show a particular thing. So you see that it waited for a minute and the test failed automatically, because it's the test reason in the console is that timed out while enabling automation mode. So as a user, if you are just trying to run your test locally, it's going to be very annoying, to say the least, because once you enter this password, you don't have to enter it again. But if you restart your machine, you will have to enter it again. And it also asks for another permission, which is let me just cancel this. It asks for another permissions, which is UI testing requires permission to use accessibility features. And alert says that to proceed, you will need to give Xcode helper permission to use accessibility. And you click grant access, and this dialog takes you to system preferences. So I have already done this. It only asks you once for this, but you will have to do it for the first time when you are doing your macOS UI testing. So if I go to system preferences and go to security and privacy, and then go back to accessibility, I see that this permission allows the apps to control your computer. I want to focus on the words control your computer. So Apple knows that this permission is dangerous for the user, if because the app can control your computer. So for this reason, you cannot just give this permission automatically. You have to explicitly click on that dialog. So for example, if you want to run your macOS tests on a remote machine, because of some reason, because of CI/CD purposes, you want to run your tests on a remote machine, then how will you give this permission automatically? Because the purpose of CI/CD is that you do not manually interfere and the test runs automatically. So for this purpose, there is a database that Apple has, which is called tcc.database, and the name is Transparency, Consent, and Control System, as the name suggests. So if I go and try to open that file, it's in application support. If I try to open this file, it says that the document could not be opened. You don't have the permission for this. And as expected, Apple has very locked down this file. And the only way to you can update this file is when you have system integrity protection disabled on your machine. So for now that I have given it manually, let's take the example if you want to do it on your CI/CD machine. So if you are doing what so first let's run the test again by giving it the permission it requires. You see that how it scrolls down, then takes my cursor, clicks on the next author, then goes up again, clicks on that particular author, and then the text succeeds successfully. So the thing is that I have done some test on a CI provider, and I have specifically mentioned in the configuration file that I want to add the UI test permissions, but even after that it is failing. And if you see the reason for this, if I go to the test option and if I see the reason for this, it failed to initialize for UI testing and timed out while enabling UI testing. So this is the same exact error that we got earlier, because it was waiting for us to give the password to that particular alert and fix, and then it will proceed. But on a headless machine, you cannot do that while without manually interfering. So for this reason, so for this, you have to make sure that the permission are added to the machine. And with Xcode 13.3, there has been some mess up that has happened, because all the CI/CD providers are failing on this error even after their machines are SIP disabled and all the permissions are required. So it kind of looks like Apple does not want you to do your macOS test on a CI/CD platform and make it less fun. So on a side note, I intimated my team at Code Magic about this, and it got fixed pretty quickly. So if I run the same test on Xcode 13.3 on Code Magic, it worked perfectly fine. All the tests passed successfully because we added that permission for that alert. So it just bypasses that alert so that we can go on doing the testing part. So now that we know all the details that you require to run your apps on a CI/CD machine, so you may either contact your CI/CD provider to add these relevant permissions to the machine, or you can use, because it requires your system integrity protection disabled, and you cannot do it on your own. Like, you have to restart your machine, that virtual machine, and then add those permissions. So you cannot do this on your own, and you have to tell them to do that, or you can switch to a provider that does it for you automatically. So coming back to the conclusion, is testing for macOS app fun? It depends. Like, the one thing is that when you compare it to iOS testing and macOS testing, there is some subtle differences, especially when it comes to UI testing. And because of the lack of resources that are out there, you will have to dig in through different GitHub repositories and to see how you can handle two different windows, or if you want to test on a split view, how will you do that? So it gets little frustrating when you are doing some testing part, and you want, even after hundreds of Stack Overflow answers, you will not get the required question, and you will have to go through the undocumented documentation to find your answer. And the second problem is with this permissions that you have to manually give. Even if you are running on your local machine, you have to give it every time after you restart your machine. That's a little annoying. And if you're running it on your CI/CD machine, then you will have to make sure that it runs every time, because if your iOS app will run successfully on your machine, on your local machine, and after giving permissions for macOS, but it may fail for this very reason on a headless remote machine. And with that, I want to conclude my talk. And I'm very active on Twitter, and you can tag me on Twitter if you have any queries or doubts. I open source my libraries and frameworks on GitHub at Rudrank Riyam, and I write about iOS, tvOS, and will start with macOS development writing on my blog, which is rudrank.blog. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks heaps for that, Rudrank. It's actually very interesting. I've only ever done UI testing for iOS, so I definitely learned a bit about some of the considerations when doing it for macOS. And I hadn't really thought about it before, but no, very interesting. So if anyone's got any questions, you can post them either in the Meetup channel on Slack, or you can ask Rudrank directly in the Zoom. I'll be posting the link to the Zoom in a few minutes in the Slack group. But that concludes the formal part of the meetup. And yeah, we'll now be moving over to Zoom. So a quick reminder, next month, we'll be back in person at Billu. And yeah, look forward to seeing everyone there. If you're interested in giving a talk, please reach out and we can make that happen. So thanks everyone. We'll catch you on Zoom. If not, catch you next month.